Did you know that the islands of New Zealand are actually the exposed peaks of an entire continent? A landmass the size of the Indian subcontinent, sitting 94% submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean. That an eruption from a New Zealand supervolcano was so catastrophically violent it turned the skies red above ancient Rome, and was recorded by historians who had absolutely no idea what caused it, and that New Zealand was the very last major landmass on Earth to be settled by human beings, and it happened far more recently than you would ever guess. New Zealand is not just stunning scenery and friendly people, it is one of the most geologically extreme, biologically unique, and historically extraordinary places on the entire planet, and most of what makes it truly wild, nobody talks about. Get ready, because today you're going to discover 15 incredible facts about New Zealand that will completely change the way you see this island nation at the bottom of the world. 15. The country that beat the world. Let's start with a fact that seems simple, but is actually kind of enormous when you think about it. In 1893, New Zealand became the first self-governing country in the world to grant women the right to vote. Not Britain, not France, not the United States, which didn't manage it until 1920, that's 27 years later. The woman who led the movement, Kate Shepherd, collected petitions so massive they had to be physically rolled into parliament rather than handed in, and the government signed it into law. Just like that. It's one of those facts that quietly rearranges your understanding of which countries were actually ahead of their time. New Zealand was decades ahead of almost everyone, and it did it from the edge of the world in a country of barely 1 million people, long before women's rights was a global conversation. 14. The sheep situation. You've probably heard that New Zealand has a lot of sheep, but the actual numbers are something else. At its peak in the 1980s, there were roughly 22 sheep for every single person in New Zealand. Today that ratio has come down, but there are still around 5 to 6 sheep per human being in the country. And to put that into American terms, imagine if the entire population of Texas was outnumbered 6 to 1 by sheep on roughly the same land area. The geography is the reason. Rolling green hills, abundant rainfall, mild temperatures year-round. New Zealand's landscape is essentially a perfect natural pasture, and that environment turned a country of just 5 million people into one of the most significant agricultural exporters in the world, pound for pound, relative to its size. 13. The parrot that shouldn't exist. The Kia is the only alpine parrot in the world. Every other parrot on Earth lives in tropical or subtropical environments. The Kia lives year-round in the mountains of New Zealand's South Island, in snow, ice, and temperatures well below freezing. And it doesn't just survive up there, it thrives. The reason comes down to isolation. When New Zealand broke away from the ancient supercontinent Gondwana about 80 million years ago, there were no land mammals here. So instead of mammals filling all the ecological roles, the high-altitude scavengers, the problem solvers, birds did. The Kia evolved into the mountain specialist. And get this, in measured intelligence tests, Kias regularly outperform animals with significantly larger brains. They solve multi-step problems, use tools, and cooperate with each other. They also rip windshield wipers off rental cars every single time. 12. The boulders on the beach. On a stretch of coastline on New Zealand's South Island near the town of Oamaru, there are enormous spherical boulders sitting directly on the sand. Some of them are nearly 6 feet across, perfectly round, some cracked open to reveal a crystalline interior, some grouped together, some sitting alone, half buried, like something deliberately placed. They're called the Moeraki boulders, and they are septarian concretions, formed about 60 million years ago when minerals slowly crystallized around organic cores on the ancient seafloor, growing outward over millions of years into near-perfect spheres. When the softer mudstone around them eroded away, the boulders were left sitting on the beach. Maori tradition says they are food baskets washed ashore from a great ancestral canoe wrecked on this coast. I've walked among them at low tide, and honestly, both explanations feel equally convincing when you're standing there. 11. The cave that looks like space. In the Waikato region of New Zealand's North Island, you step into a small boat in complete darkness. The guide asks for silence, and then the lights go out, and the ceiling of the cave turns into a galaxy. The Waitomo glowworm caves are home to Arachnocampa luminosa, a glowworm species that exists nowhere else on Earth. These aren't fireflies, they're the larvae of a fungus gnat, producing bioluminescent light to lure prey. Tens of thousands of them cover the cave ceiling in a living constellation of cold blue-green light. The colony only survives here because of a very specific underground geography. The humidity, temperature, airflow, and mineral content of the water all have to line up exactly right. Change any one of those variables and the whole ecosystem collapses. I have been to a lot of caves on a lot of continents. I have never experienced anything like Waitomo. It is genuinely otherworldly. Hey, before we keep going, make sure you subscribe and leave a like. We're not even halfway through, and it only gets more extraordinary from here. 10. The volcano you could tour. About 30 miles off the coast of New Zealand's North Island, in the middle of the Bay of Plenty, there is an island sitting on top of an active volcano. It's called Kauri, or White Island, and for most of the 20th century, tourists could actually board a boat, sail out there, and walk around inside the crater. The bulk of the volcanic structure sits beneath the ocean surface. The island is just the top of a much larger system on the seafloor. The rock is stained yellow and orange from sulfur. The air smells like rotten eggs. Nothing grows there. In December 2019, it erupted without warning while a tour group was on the crater floor. The tragedy that followed permanently changed how New Zealand relates to the site. But geologically, White Island is a reminder of something you can never quite forget. New Zealand sits directly on the collision zone of the Pacific and Australian tectonic plates. The entire country is, geologically speaking, still being assembled. 9. The place that gets more rain than the Amazon. Milford Sound receives somewhere between 6 and 9 meters of rainfall per year. That is up to 30 feet annually. For comparison, the Amazon rainforest gets about 9 feet per year. The geography creates it. Milford sits at the end of a deep, glacially carved valley inside Fiordland National Park, one of the largest national parks in the world. Weather systems roll in off the Tasman Sea and slam directly into the Southern Alps with almost nothing to slow them down. The mountains force the air upward, it cools, and the rain just pours constantly. And here's a correction most tourists never learn. Milford Sound is not actually a sound, it's a fjord. Sounds are carved by rivers. Fjords are carved by glaciers. Milford was carved by glaciers. The early European settlers just named it wrong, and the name stuck. On a rare clear day, the cliff walls rise over 5,000 feet straight out of the water. It is genuinely hard to process the scale. 8. The island that had no predators. Before humans arrived, New Zealand had something that almost no other place on Earth has ever had. 0 land predators. New Zealand split from Gondwana before most modern mammals evolved. Surrounded by deep ocean on every side, no predatory land animals ever made it there. No cats, no foxes, no snakes, no bears, nothing that hunted on the ground. So the birds took over completely. Without anything to flee from, they evolved to fill every niche mammals occupy on other continents. The kiwi became nocturnal and ground-dwelling, sniffing out food through nostrils at the tip of its beak like a mammal. The kakapo, the world's heaviest parrot, lost the ability to fly entirely. The moa grew to over 11 feet tall and became the dominant large herbivore. Then humans arrived with rats, dogs, cats, and stoats. Dozens of species that had evolved with 0 defenses went extinct almost immediately. New Zealand is still working to reverse that damage today. The conservation effort is one of the most ambitious and most urgent in the world. 7. The mountain that shrank overnight. Moeraki, or Mount Cook, is New Zealand's tallest mountain, over 12,000 feet, rising from the center of the Southern Alps, one of the most dramatic peaks in the Southern Hemisphere. And in December 1991, it got shorter. The upper portion of the summit collapsed in a massive landslide. About 14 million cubic meters of rock and ice let go in a single event. When it was over, Moeraki had lost approximately 33 feet of height, essentially overnight. The geology behind it is the same force that built the mountain in the first place. New Zealand's tectonic collision pushes the Southern Alps upward at about 1 centimeter per year, but that same pressure builds instability into the rock. The mountain is constantly being rebuilt from below and destroyed from above simultaneously. The version of Moeraki you would see today is not quite the same mountain that existed a year ago. It never is. Remember to subscribe and leave a like. We've got the top 6 still to come, and number 1 changes how you see where New Zealand actually is on the planet. 6. The ancient giant. In the Waipua forest on New Zealand's North Island, there is a kauri tree called Tane Mahuta. In Maori, that name means Lord of the Forest. It stands about 50 meters tall. Its trunk is nearly 14 meters around, and it is estimated to be somewhere between 1,250 and 2,500 years old. This tree was alive and possibly already enormous before Columbus was born, before the Magna Carta, before the Norman Conquest. Here's the hard part. The kauri forests of New Zealand were almost entirely destroyed during European settlement. The timber was extraordinary, enormous, straight-grained, rot-resistant, and the British Empire used it heavily. By the early 20th century, the original forests were nearly gone. Tane Mahuta is a survivor, and standing in front of it, knowing that everything around it was cut down while it kept growing, is a feeling that genuinely stays with you. 5. The eruption that Rome noticed. Lake Taupo looks like the perfect place for a fishing trip. Calm, blue, enormous. The largest lake in New Zealand, covering about 238 square miles, sitting peacefully in the center of the North Island. But Taupo is a caldera, the collapsed crater of a supervolcano. Around 232 CE, it produced one of the most violent eruptions in the last 5,000 years of Earth's history. The Hatepi eruption ejected an estimated 120 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere. The gases and particles it threw into the upper atmosphere circled the entire planet. Roman and Chinese historians, writing around the same period, recorded strange and alarming red skies. They had no idea what caused it. New Zealand wouldn't appear on any European map for another 1,400 years. But New Zealand had already made itself known through the atmosphere to a world that didn't even know it existed. 4. The last place on Earth. This one deserves a moment. For most of human history, New Zealand didn't exist in any human story. While Rome was building its empire, while China's dynasties rose and fell, while the Americas were being settled, New Zealand was empty. Just forest, birds, and silence. The Maori arrived by ocean-going canoe, navigating thousands of miles of open Pacific using stars, ocean currents, and the flight patterns of birds. Around 1280 CE, that's based on the most recent and broadly accepted archaeological and genetic research. New Zealand was the last major landmass on Earth to be settled by human beings, about 750 years ago. And when the Maori got there, they found an ecosystem so intact and so untouched, it was unlike anything left anywhere else on the planet at that point. The birds had no fear of them. The forests were ancient. It was, in every real sense, the last place. 3. The first light. On the eastern tip of New Zealand's North Island, at East Cape and the city of Gisborne, something happens every single morning. The sun rises there first. Because of New Zealand's position in the Pacific and the way the international dateline curves, the East Cape region is consistently one of the very first inhabited places on Earth to see each new day. Gisborne regularly claims the title of the first city to greet the sunrise. On New Year's Eve, when most of America is still hours from midnight, Gisborne has already been in the new year for over half a day. The country that was the absolute last place on Earth to be found and settled by human beings now experiences every single day before almost anyone else. There's something about that which feels like the universe has a sense of humor. 2. The wind that never stops. Wellington, New Zealand's capital city, sits at the southern tip of the North Island, right at the point where the Cook Strait funnels wind between the country's two main islands. And it is relentless. Wellington is consistently ranked among the windiest cities on Earth. Its average wind speeds exceed Chicago's by a significant margin, and Chicago built an entire identity around being windy. In Wellington, gusts can top 100 miles per hour. Trees grow sideways here. Locals develop a physical instinct for leaning into the wind the way other people develop an instinct for watching traffic. The Cook Strait itself is one of the roughest stretches of water in the world, where the Tasman Sea meets the Pacific Ocean through a narrow, turbulent channel. Wellington exists at the exact geographic point where two oceans, two islands, and two weather systems collide. It is beautiful, it is dramatic, and it never stops blowing. 1. The drowned continent. And we end with the fact that repositions everything. New Zealand is not just a group of islands, it is the exposed peaks of an entire continent and called Zealandia that is 94% submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean. Zealandia broke away from Gondwana about 80 million years ago and slowly sank over tens of millions of years, leaving only its highest points above the surface. The islands of New Zealand and New Caledonia. It covers approximately 1.9 million square miles of ocean floor, making it comparable in size to the entire Indian subcontinent. Scientists didn't formally recognize Zealandia as a continent until 2017. The reason it took so long is straightforward. 94% of it is underwater, making it extraordinarily difficult to map and study. But think about what that actually means. Those two small islands you see on the globe, they're the summit of a drowned continent. The rest of it is down there, beneath the Pacific, vast, silent, and almost entirely unexplored. It has been there for 80 million years. New Zealand isn't at the bottom of the world, it's the top of a lost world that slipped beneath the waves tens of millions of years ago. And it's been waiting there the whole time. There's another video on screen right now, so go check it out. But before you do, hit subscribe and leave a like so we can keep exploring this incredible world together. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.